Our resident lawyer, Despina Priala of boutique law firm Priala Legal in Runaway Bay, with us every Thursday to offer her legal expertise by providing some general advice on the latest hot topics, and the hot topics coming thick and fast. We almost need to do this program every day. It's changing so quickly. Of course, having experience spanning more than 25 years in the area of property and commercial law, she joins us now. Morning, Despina.
Good morning, Wayne. Good morning, Brooke.
Good morning, Despina. So first up, we're talking about sovereign citizens and dilemmas that surround them when it comes to the law and, of course, this pandemic. So, Despina, it's just caused a lot of drama, hasn't it?
It has. So the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm sure you'll agree, has brought many challenges to everybody. So not just individual people and citizens like you and I, but also people who have to enforce all of these new laws, so in law enforcement officers, to everybody really. And we've had so many challenges. I mean, we've had human rights challenges. So we've tried to balance out our human rights against all of these new laws that really go against some of those human rights that we've known, such as restriction of freedom, restriction of movement. So we've had to try and balance those out. We've also had challenges in relation to people working remotely, people who have to appear in court remotely during the pandemic, and of course witnessing of documents remotely. So that's also brought about challenges on a daily basis through society and through the court system. And then, of course, other challenges such as access to justice for those that are vulnerable. In lockdown situations, there was a rise of domestic violence. So we've had all of those issues and challenges that we faced in the last 18 months. Other challenges, interesting ones that have come into the forefront, is this notion of sovereign citizen.
Can we start with just a look at what that actually means? So, sovereign citizen. This is something that some people have taken to court, perhaps over over charges that have been laid against them. They're claiming they're a sovereign citizen. What does that actually mean?
Well, people who are using this notion of that they are a sovereign citizen means that they are people that believe that the laws of the state don't really apply to them. Because they have revoked their quote-unquote consent for this to occur. So what they're saying is, look, I'm a natural person, I'm born with my own natural rights, and the government cannot constrain me whatsoever, and I'm going to invoke my sovereign citizen rights. Well, it's really not a valid notion. So I wanted to mention it this morning and say, look, it is a concept out there that's being thrown around. I can say very clearly to everybody, it is not a valid concept or notion that people can use, and it's not a valid argument for people to use out there to say, well, you know what, I'm not going to comply with all these lawful directions and laws on the basis that I'm a sovereign citizen, because it's absolute, utter nonsense. And I can say that because we've had a district court judge say that recently in a case in Queensland on the Sunshine Coast. So Justice Glenn Cash QC has come out recently and said that it is absolute nonsense for someone in this day and age to use an argument of being a sovereign citizen solely on the basis of a non-compliance of a lawful direction or order.
So how did this all start? Did this all start, this sovereign citizen stuff, because of the pandemic, or has this been something that people have been dealing with for a long time?
Look, they might have used the sovereign citizen argument in the past, but it's coming to the forefront now because of the COVID-19 pandemic and because of the restrictions to some of our human rights, such as restrictions of movements and what we can and cannot do. And people are using, or some people are using this supposed legal argument about being a sovereign citizen. And the roots of this really go back to the time of the signing of the Magna Carta.
Oh,
and some of the so some of the listeners out there
goes back a while.
Them.
Yeah.
Yes, it goes back a while, 1215, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh my God. Just a couple of days ago, you know.
Exactly right. So a lot of listeners out there, I'm sure, will know and remember the Magna Carta from their ancient history days. Magna Carta was a piece of law that was signed back in 1215, and when the laws of England did have some applicability over to the laws in Australia and Australian citizens in terms of common law. But in our current day and age, what was seen back in the Magna Carta days certainly is not the laws
It's
that we
not
see today in
valid.
Australia.
Yeah.
And we've come, yes, and we've come very far in terms of what our constitution says and the current laws that have been legislated. So basically, no, there is no defence of sovereign citizen. So let's get that clear out there in society. And people who know that, and it's been put out there now by a district court judge because it was apparently used in a particular case recently up in Queensland, that what you have to be careful of course, is knowing that, and me putting it out there, particularly on the show, and obviously this other judge up in the Sunshine Coast that has also come out and said that, and it's been publicised, is that you have to be careful to try and continue to use that argument, because knowing that it's not a legal argument and then saying down the track, oh, I didn't know, there's this idea of, well, I didn't know what the law was, therefore it's a defence and I'm immune to any possible consequences. That doesn't actually work. It's called a mistake of law, where people sometimes use that, oh, I didn't know what the law was. It's actually not a real defence under the criminal code and criminal matters. So people need to be careful about just throwing this banter out in certain situations that they might find themselves where they have to comply with lawful directions and orders, and saying, well, I'm a sovereign citizen, I revoke my consent, I'm a natural person and I don't have to comply with any laws of Australia. Well, that's just simply incorrect.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that people are trying to use this, but at the end of the day, these lawful directions are made in the states, territories, and we do have to comply with them unless we have valid, reasonable reasons not to comply under those laws. And we just have to remember that moving forward.
And I guess it's a case of whether we like it or not, because we have rights, but they also come with the other side of responsibilities as well to other people and to upholding the law, etc.
Well, that's right. And I don't want to confuse the supposed sovereign citizen argument with someone who truly has a valid and legal argument under, for example, the Human Rights Act.
Yep.
So there are human rights that we all have that have been legislated, and we don't want to confuse the sovereign citizen argument, which really doesn't hold water at all, to, well, if I'm putting up a proper legal argument about my human rights, you may be able to do that. So they're two distinct different things.
Yeah, of course. And obviously what we've seen as well is that the public health alerts and the, I guess, direction that we get from public health authorities, it goes hand in hand with like you said, Wayne, it goes hand in hand with human rights to a degree, because it is meant to protect everyone in regards to masks and moving freely throughout the state as well, or the country.
Well, that's right, because when we talk about human rights and the restrictions of those, we've had mask wearing laws, we've had checking in, QR codes laws, we've had the vaccine debate, which we continue to have, no jab, no job. We've got potential issues about discrimination in the workplace, and what is a fair work employee issues that we've had raised as well because of those. So yes, it's interesting times, and they do all centre around, or a lot of them do, around your human rights. But we do have these lawful directions and orders in place that do have to be complied with, unless you can have an exemption that is allowed at law. And then we just have to continue to move with those in our current times.
Definitely. That is Despina Priala from Priala Legal. And coming up next, we'll be discussing the new changes to the law in regards to sex discrimination and sexual harassment in the workplace. Very important topic. Stay tuned. You're listening to Radio 97.